I'm about to stain big box store pine the color walnut like I used to do as a beginner woodworker. And then I'm gonna build the same coffee table a second time with actual black walnut to show you what an unbelievable difference it makes. The disparity in cost will surprise you. But I'm not stopping there. I'm gonna build this table 2 more times, once using a high-end hardwood option that is hard to find, but gorgeous, and another time using a little trick I like to use to get expensive looking results for less than you'd spend on this junk at Home Depot. After watching this video, you'll understand not only the difference between staining wood and using natural wood, but also how to get the best deal. There are many hardwood sellers who overcharge and engage in dangerous practices that will ruin your project, or worse, your client's home. The information in this video will save you money and prevent disappointment. This video is sponsored by Incogni. Let's go get some hockey sticks. I really went back and forth on which pine to buy because there's select pine, which is clear and doesn't have knots and is usually straighter, and then there's the common pine. So to make my life easier, I went with the select pine. And because I needed thicker pieces, I want to show you why you should never use construction grade lumber on your projects. So I bought this 2x12, and boy do we have a lesson for you coming up on why you should never use this type of lumber in your furniture. Now throughout this video, you're going to see me cutting in shots of me using all different types of lumber because I figured it would be boring if you just saw me building the same table over and over and over again. So I'll show you one time the operation and mix in the different wood species. I'll also show you how I get hardwood lumber at the best prices and tell you a story of how I almost got scammed the first time I went to buy hardwood. Now, one good thing about this selection from the big box store is it's basically S4S, which means it's surfaced on all 4 sides. Between you and me, I never take S4S or even S3S at face value. I found that with wood, there is always going to be some movement, so it's best practice, in my opinion, to take a milling pass on them after they've been acclimated to your shop environment, no matter how finished they are. Now would be a great time to fill you in on the design of this table. My friend Sam at Monkey Boy's Workshop has designed this really cool table that he and his wife sell to a lot of clients in the UK. I've always admired Sam's style, and I've never attempted a table with this design and angled legs. In an effort to build some skill, I decided to build Sam's table for this video, and it turns out Sam sells plans for this beauty, so you can build it too if you want. Instead of paying for the plans like a chump, he sponsored this video and gave me $2,500 to feature his plans instead of bourbon moths. I'm kidding. I'm a chump and paid for the plans full price. And regrettably, he isn't sponsoring this video, but he has a cool accent. And speaking of accents, I have a question for our international viewers. When I, a Southern American who lives in the great Republic of Texas, hear the accent of someone overseas from England or even Australia, I automatically attribute an extra 20 IQ points to them because they sound so smart. However, I have a sneaking suspicion that the reverse is true. Break it to me. When you hear someone like me talk and you have one of those great accents, do you automatically deduct 20 IQ points from me like I add 20 points to you? Let me know, but please be gentle. Mate? Now, if you've never made a circle out of a square, this is a really cool trick. And it's that you don't actually need to make a complete square with your wood. You can save some material. But to make sure that I have enough material where I'm going to cut, I came up with this terrible idea using a string and my pencil to try to get the circumference. Is that the right word? Later, I actually figure it out and I'll show you a really cool trick. Now, you don't actually need to use dominoes, but I just want to trigger all the people who don't like the Festal domino. So I'm using it just for them. Actually, it's a good idea because there's so many of these boards and it is pine from Home Depot, and so they're not perfect. When you put a lot of glue on that and you start clamping up, in my experience, they start slipping around. So the dominoes really just kind of hold things together. Obviously, you don't need them for strength. You hear people all the time say they're for alignment, and it really is just to help with the glue up. That said, I kind of enjoy doing it just to trigger people. I tried to glue these up in several sections so that I could maintain as flat a piece as possible. Despite my best efforts, there was still a lot of cupping and movement because this is cheap pine. It's not very dry. And so there is a solution for that. And this is what beginners do. They just make lines and then try to sand them off. But that's not what the pros do. And I got a tip here, and it's completely free and it's amazing. And I want to see you use it in your next project. If you want to be a professional and you want to learn how to flatten, this is how you do it. Right there, people. Do it and tag me on Instagram. Now, the problem with the string compass was that it would wrap around the screw or wrap around the pencil. Duh. So the next idea was just to actually make a real compass. And this worked out perfectly because it allowed me to line up my boards where I want. Now, if you're wondering about this is kind of the brilliance to Sam's design is you don't actually need to use a lot of material to get a thick tabletop. Most of the tabletop is 3/4 of an inch, but the perimeter is doubled up to give the illusion of a thicker base, which helps with cost. However, you do have to take into account wood movement. So what you're seeing me do here is clamping up and gluing the sides so that all the grain is going in the right direction. Then using my compass, I'm drawing out where the ends go that will be cross grain. And this is very important. I'm only putting glue in the middle. If you were to glue the entire board cross grain, when the wood moves, which this will, you're going to have problems. So the trick is put a good amount of glue in the middle and then you're gonna brad nail. I can't even say it without laughing. You're gonna brad nail the end. Now, I'll admit, like you, I was skeptical whether this would work, whether the brad nails would come out, but it actually worked really well. And the brad nails are soft enough that if there is wood movement and expansion, they're gonna give a little bit and the wood isn't going to split. But because I'm gonna take a router bit to this, I took my time to draw out the lines with a compass, and I repeated that on top of the new board so that I knew exactly where to place my brad nails using my very expensive brad nailer. Now here on the corners, you see me doing the same thing. I'm marking out where my lines will be, where my cut will be, and I'm only going to put glue in the middle on one of the boards so that the other boards will be free to flex when there is the inevitable wood movement. This is the third iteration of this compass jig. I don't love drilling into the bottom of the table, even though it's fine, but if you have really strong double-sided tape, you can do this. If you use the same drill bit of drilling the holes, you can put the drill bit in upside down and it's perfect. So nice little free tip for you there. I'm using a quality spiral compression bit to do the first half of this table upside down. Now, my bit isn't long enough to go the full length, and nor would I want to do that anyway. So the trick that I do is you go about halfway and you take a jigsaw, you cut out the waist, leaving maybe 1/4 of an inch left of an overhang, and then you flip that table over using a different bit with a bearing. You can flush trim, referencing the cut that you just made, and you have a perfect circle that you made out of a square, which for a woodworker, especially a beginner, is really satisfying knowing that you made a perfect circle out of a bunch of square and rectangular material. And if you're ever gonna do this, just save yourself some headache and get a quality bit. I just started using these quality bits from Bits and Bits. And even though I'm a tool snob, I've held off for so long to invest in really good bits, and I always just buy the cheap ones from Amazon. It's one of those things, you just have to try it. It's so much better in every way. And when I first started doing this type of stuff, I would get 2x6s, which is the last thing you want to buy from Home Depot. A trick you will commonly see people do, which is actually good, is to buy 2x12s and then cut out this section, the pith. This is the center of the tree. It's the most unstable and the ugliest, and you're going to see why this is kind of a dangerous thing. Now, I've heard of people who are really concerned about kickback on track saws, and I've always kind of rolled my eyes at it because most of the time I use plywood. But in this case, if you're going to do this with a track saw, you want to make sure you have a track saw that either has a riving knife or anti-kickback technology, because look what happened here. Now, this was the straightest one I could find, and immediately as I started cutting into it, the blade started smoking and it started to pinch because there was so much tension in this wood. So I decided to stop, to do a half pass, and to bring out some shims to try to prevent the wood from pinching on my blade. I recently heard a story of a guy who was using a cheaper track saw. He had both hands on his saw, and because of kickback, the saw jumped off the track and somehow, and I don't understand how this happened, cut his fingers off. I saw the picture, but I'm not going to show you. This stuff is no joke. Look at how much tension there was in this board. Now, I wasn't really scared about it because I'm very cautious, but I cut a straight line with a straight single track, and look at how curved that is. Now, I paid for this track saw. This one by Festool happens to have an anti-kickback technology on it, which basically means it senses if the blade is going to come off the track and it immediately kills the motor, giving you the best chance of protection. There's other saws that just have physical riving knives, but if you're going to cut into solid wood, be careful when you're using a track saw. Now check out this. When I cut the pith off of the other board, just how much tension there was, and look at how much of a hockey stick that pith was. Now, I learned this lesson the hard way. By the time you account for all of the wasted material due to knot holes and things like that, the amount of usable, good, straight-grained wood from construction-grade lumber, it's just not worth it when you consider the real cost of what you get, your time. It would really be better just to get actual hardwood that is straight-grained and is really good and dry and not 20 or 30% moisture. I mean, I think about a third of this board was actually usable for this project. And I knew that going into it. I just wanted to try this to show you what no one showed me 12, 14 years ago when I started to adopt this practice. However, with the pieces left over, I went ahead and jointed and planed and milled them up to get them as square as possible because they were not square, which meant I had to stack and sticker them for a few days to acclimate to my environment because they still were moving. Now, if this is all you have available to you, fine, but chances are you can get better wood than this. If you're new to the channel, hopefully by now you've picked up that we're all about sawdust and sarcasm, and I don't like to do things the normal way. So, and I might get in trouble for this in a moment, I'm going to attempt to sneak famous lines from these 6 movies in the ad read. And as a bonus, I'll throw in Chris Farley. Let me know if you catch them all. Oh, one more thing. I'm not telling the sponsor I'm doing it. So there's that. The first time I bought hardwood, I almost got scammed by a hardwood broker. But before I tell you the story, there's another type of scamming brokers that are affecting your life and mine, and that's where this video sponsor, Incogni, comes in. Ignorance is bliss, but not when it comes to your personal information being stolen and sold online. The number and scope of data breaches that are happening online are growing each year, and it's as if where they're going, they don't even need roads. And that means that your personal information like name, social security number, login credentials, home address, location history, online activity are being sold or published online without you even knowing about it. The good news is that you have the right to protect your privacy and request that data brokers delete the information they hold about you. The bad news is it would take you years to do it manually just once, and you'd need to repeat the process every few months as data brokers continue collecting your data and creating new records. If you rolled up and saw all of your information they're stealing and selling, you'd say, how long has that been there? And I think we're going to need a bigger boat. If you wonder if your data has been sold, here's a question for you. Do you ever get robocalls to your phone? If you've ever wondered how they keep getting your number, the answer is data brokers. Scammers can even use AI to mimic the voices of friends and family to trick victims into sending them money. And these imposter scams rely entirely on the voice data that they can find online. And that's a special type of scammer who deserves to live in a van down by the river living off of government cheese. I personally use Incogni because they reach out to data brokers on my behalf, request my personal data removal, and then they deal with any objections. All this is automated and ongoing, and I can watch the progress from my dashboard. I've taken my personal data back, and so why don't you join me? Since you've got a friend in me, you can use the code WHITWORKS at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. I don't know about you, but I think that ad read was beautiful. When I was sick of buying hockey sticks at Home Depot, I began looking for a real place to buy hardwoods. I ended up walking into Alamo Hardwoods in San Antonio, and boy, was I sticker shocked when I saw the prices. And I told them as much. So they recommended me to their competitor, which seemed odd at the time, but in hindsight, it totally makes sense because I think they were pranking me. Here's what happened. I walked into the competitor's showroom to find that they were a special dealer for hard-to-find reclaimed wood and did custom flooring. If you were wealthy and wanted to spend $100,000 on one-of-a-kind custom flooring no one else would have, you called this company. I asked them if they carried rough pecan that I could use for my woodworking projects. They didn't know what to do with me, but said they could source some for me. So I gave them my email and went on my way. Here's where it gets good. A few days later, I get an email quoting me $9 a board foot for rough Texas pecan, which to be fair was less than the price at Alamo ripoffs. But right before I pulled out my credit card to buy this cheap pecan, I noticed there was more to the email. There was a forwarded message at the bottom. The hardwood broker had passed along the email message from their supplier by mistake. I was curious, so I scrolled down to discover that they were buying the pecan at $3 a board foot and passing it on to me for $9. I googled the name of the company, expecting to see that they were somewhere else in North America, but I was shocked to find that they were only 10 miles away from me. The name of the company, Dakota Hardwoods. I called them and asked if they sold to the public because they seemed like a specialty house only serving cabinet makers or shady hardwood brokers. They informed me that money is money and they'd happily take my business. So I asked them what their price for Texas pecan was. I expected somewhere around $8 to $9. They told me, wait for it, $3 a board foot. The same price they were giving to the hardwood broker. Now props to the broker for 3xing their cost by simply sending an email. I mean, bravo, it almost worked. I'm so glad they accidentally forwarded the email because I discovered that hardwood was cheaper cheaper than what I was bracing for, and sometimes cheaper than Home Depot. Now, the people at Dakota became my best friends for many years. They had the best prices, good selection, and would let me filter through the stacks to get the exact boards that I wanted. Now, this is not sponsored by them in any way. I always paid full price, and I was nobody to them. Believe me, I tried, but they didn't even know my name. They have me in their system as Drew Mitt with an M, not a W. Now, if you're in San Antonio and you've not heard of Dakota Hardwoods, you're welcome. Put the big red and barbacoa down and hit the subscribe button as a thank you. Now, most of you don't live in San Antonio and you're probably thinking, I don't have a Dakota Hardwoods, this doesn't help me. And I feel you because I'm in the same boat. 6 months ago, we moved away from Pee Wee Herman in the Alamo and we landed in a new city without my trusty supplier. So here's what you do. You go to Facebook Marketplace. No, I'm just kidding, don't do that. I'll tell you why in a moment. But seriously, this is the hard part, but the juice is totally worth the squeeze. And there's many ways to do this, but at its root, you want to try to find where the professionals in your area get their materials and understand that money is money and those suppliers will probably sell to you too. Now you can Google for those suppliers, and if that doesn't work, Google custom cabinet makers or trim and finish carpenters in your area. And if you find some, befriend them. Tell them what you're looking for and ask them where they get their plywood and hardwood. If they tell you Home Depot, hang up and never hire them to work in your house. Like Eric Curtis, they're posers. They probably have a fake Emmy in their work fan. Stay far away and try the next one. I know that it's obvious to Google these suppliers, but I'm serious. These suppliers will have higher quality materials for less than the junk at the big box store, not to mention a wide variety of things you could never find at Home Depot or Lowe's. Now, 6 months ago when we moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I started by Googling plywood company in Fort Worth, and I found a company literally called Plywood Company Fort Worth. It was so on the nose, I thought it was a scam where people set up fake companies and websites based on common search terms, but I reached out to some subscribers who were in the area, and they all told me to go to the Plywood Company. Turns out it's the place to buy plywood and hardwood. Again, not sponsored, but this is where I got the materials for this video. Now here's why I personally avoid the marketplace deals on Snapface. The number one cost driver in hardwood is drying time in the kiln. And so when you see Cletus selling slabs he cut behind his double wide for cheap, even if they've dried a year for each thickness, you want to stay away for one big reason. And actually it's a tiny reason that causes a big problem. Bugs. Insects love trees, and in the kiln, they're toast. And when wood air dries naturally, most likely the insects stay in their home. Which means if you're building furniture out of any wood that hasn't been kiln dried, you're potentially bringing insects into your family's home or the home of another family. So when I buy hardwood, I always bring a moisture meter to verify that it's actually dry, and I ask which method was used in drying the wood. No woodworker wants material with 20% moisture content, and no client wants bugs. When I first started YouTube over 3 years ago, I published build videos, and they were terrible, like 200 views terrible. They're still public if you want to scroll back and look at how awful they are, but then something unexpected happened. I did a tool review of my Makita track saw, and it got 30,000 views very quickly when I had 50 subscribers. And I soon figured out I could grow my channel and get more views by reviewing tools, which was good and bad. And one of the funniest comments I would get on my channel over and over is, do you even know how to use these tools? You don't build anything. Or my favorite, when I would build something, people would say, I'm surprised you know how to build things. I thought all the tools were props for your video set. While that's a fair observation and critique, it's also funny because I've been building things most of my life, and most of the things I built, including a freaking house drawn from a napkin sketch, was before my YouTube channel got started. If you came to any of the places we've lived in for the last 16 years, you'd find that most of the furniture we have, I made. But the reason you don't see it, besides the fact that it's already built, is that a lot of it was made using cheap pine that I stained dark walnut. Actually, it's worse than that. I have furniture pieces that I made. I can't believe I'm going to tell you this, so please don't unsubscribe. But I have furniture that I made out of pallets. I know. Please don't leave. That was back when I didn't know any better, and I thought it was cheaper to build out of pallets because I didn't value my time. In fact, here's the actual coffee table in my living room right now in 2024 that I made out of a pallet and Minwax stain 13 years ago. It is terrible. But it's not my fault. It's Madison's fault. Back in 2011, Madison told me about this new app I had to try called Pinterest. Remember Pinterest? Is this still a thing? Now, before Dennis was hooked on wood, I was hooked on Pinterest and pallets. Pinterest was an endless time suck full of visual inspiration, which really connected with me. It gave me tons of ideas that I would have never thought about on my own, and that's what I love about the internet and making. There are so many makers and artists and ideas to be inspired by. And if you remember around that time, the trend of building furniture out of pallets was just getting into full swing. And one of the main reasons I'm making this video is not to throw shade on using cheap pine and stain. That's not my intention at all. I just want to make the video that I wish I would have seen on Pinterest 13 years ago, because the first time I got my my hands on actual walnut and put clear oil on it, when I saw the visual transformation and the wide spectrum of color variants, I was slightly mad that no one had showed me the beauty of the real thing before. It's like I was stuck in this echo chamber of 2x4s and pocket screws sponsored by Home Depot and Minwax and Craig. So if you're where I was and your default is to go to the big box store, grab some pine and stain, that's okay. You can totally do that. But I want you to know that there are more beautiful options out there that are easier to work with and probably more stable, and they don't have to break the bank. And so that's why I'm making this video. I kind of got in this mode of, oh yeah, I've got the card scraper in my hand, and I don't know what I was thinking. It was kind of embarrassing, and I just went straight to a chip brush. This is the most satisfying part of the build, and I got the idea for this video, or maybe around 3 years ago. Every time I would finish a project using walnut and I put the oil on, the transformation, it just always gets me. And I would go grab my kids, grab my wife, say, hey, look at this. Like, here's my phone, take video of this. It doesn't get old to me. I still love seeing that raw wood just come to life when you put a finish on. And it's something that doesn't happen when you stain pine. The opposite happens. It gets darker and darker and loses its life. And I'll show you that here in a second. A little trick that my friend John Schieser from Huntington Builds told me is to just buy this buffing pad that sticks onto your sander. Works great. So I went to Home Depot looking for Minwax, and apparently they don't carry Minwax anymore. So I opted to get this Bayer Premium Stain, which was a disaster because even though the can said dark walnut, look at what happened. This is why you stain the bottom of furniture pieces first. It's black, right? This isn't dark walnut. It was kind of frustrating. So I had to wait till the next day, went to the other store, and hello, darkness, my old friend. This is what dark walnut stain is supposed to look like on pine. It's still dark, but not black like the underside of that table. I haven't stained furniture like this in a long time, and I forgot just how messy it is. Look at the cardboard and just how much of a mess it is. It's kind of made me appreciate the hardwax oil that I've been using lately. Ugh. Now, as I stain this pine with dark walnut, just look at it versus putting oil on walnut. Pretty crazy, right? Now, while I was building those two tables, in the background, I had the other two tables already cut up and stacked and stickered to acclimate. And I'm sorry that I didn't film myself making most of the table. My dad came over to help, and I kind of got caught up in just building the table, and I forgot to turn on the camera for an entire day. True story. But how I made the legs, which I'm showing you the walnut version, is instead of using 2x12, obviously I can't get that in maple or oak or walnut, I just glued up 2 3/4 inch pieces, and they were totally fine once you milled them, planed them, got them good. They were fine. That squeeze out though. Now on these last two tables, I used 5% white Rubio. This is my second time using this, and here's the trick that I want to pass on. This table that you're looking at is paint grade soft maple. It's around $3.16 a board foot, which is crazy cheap. Most people don't like this type of maple because it has all this mineral color in it. I actually kind of liked it. I could have sorted through the wood to find clear. Now I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but for some people, they may like this. This maple table was cheaper than the pine big box store table. So if you need to make a cheap table or you need to prototype, go with a paint grade hardwood. Now my favorite table was this one using Rift-Sawn white oak. Really hard to find right now, and it's really expensive. This was $13.97 a board foot. Now keep in mind that is processed S4S, so a lot of the cost there is in the processing. This is my first time ever working with Rift-Sawn white oak. You can see the straight grain. It is beautiful. It is heavy. It was a dream to sand, to cut, to route. It's like this wood wanted to be shaped. And again, I put 5% Rubio on it as well. Now in a moment, I'm going to show you all 4 tables and tell you what they cost, and you're going to be shocked. But I have to do something first. Because of where these tables are going to end up, I want to make sure they have the greatest amount of protection and look the best. Now, I don't know about you, but I always struggle to find what I call the Goldilocks sheen. Sometimes things look too flat or too glossy. And what I figured out is that if you use a ceramic nano coating, especially on wood that has a hard wax finish such as Rubio, it really takes that matte flat look and brings it up just to the right amount and gives great protection. Now I'm only going to show you this walnut table with the ceramic coating because Rubio has to dry for 7 days before you can apply anything to it, and the maple table and the oak table were finished yesterday and they're still curing. I worked on this video for the entire month of March, and I don't want to wait another week or two to get it out to you, so it is what it is. Alrighty, here's the table we made from select pine and 2x12s from Home Depot. It cost $100 basically. This is just the wood. I'm not counting finish or consumables at all. $100 in cheap wood from Home Depot. Ugh. Here's the walnut, the actual walnut. How much do you think this one was? It looks more expensive, right? Color is amazing. $205, so basically $100 more than the pine stain to look like walnut. I mean, $100 more. If you're building stuff out of pine, just save up and do it the right way. It's amazing. Here's the rift sawn white oak. How much do you think this one cost? It was way heavier. Beautiful wood. I really want to build some more stuff using rift sawn white oak. Now this wood is expensive and it's hard to find sometimes. $196, basically the same as walnut, slightly cheaper. So if you like that lighter wood look, great option. Rift sawn's way better than the flat cathedral look. Now here's the soft maple paint grade. I wanted to make something super cheap to show you that you can build something cheaper than going to Home Depot. So how much do you think this soft paint grade maple cost? It has the mineral. I could have filtered through and found some clear. I think you'll be shocked at just how affordable doing something like this cost. $44 for this table. It's like half of what the pine at Home Depot cost. And for those of you typing in, why didn't you get hard maple? Yeah, I could have for just a little bit more, and I should have. Man, don't sleep on maple, people. Wow, cheaper than pine. Which one of these four is your favorite? Let me know. Hey, big congrats to you for making it to my favorite part of the video. We call it the deep end. So if you're here, let me know in the comments by putting a snorkel emoji, or if you can't find the emoji, just put the code word MIT with an M, because of that hardwood place. You may be wondering, what are we gonna do with all of these tables? And at first we were gonna donate them to the plywood company of Fort Worth and let them give them away to their customers. But someone there, Kathy, had a brilliant idea. There's a local women's shelter for battered women who support women coming out of a very tough situation, who have no belongings and are starting over. So Kathy thought, what if we gave these 4 nice coffee tables to some of those women so that they could start their life with something beautiful? I thought that was amazing, and I wanted to take it just a little bit further. So this morning, as my kids were heading off to school, I had them write some notes that say you are loved on them. We're gonna hide these notes underneath the coffee tables, but we're not gonna stop there. There's a credible community on Patreon that supports the work that we do on this channel. So this month I'm taking all the money that has been invested in our channel and I'm splitting it up, and I'm putting all the cash in these envelopes underneath these tables so that these women who are in need eventually look underneath this beautiful coffee table. They'll find a note from a kid that says you're loved and some cold hard cash. So if you support me on Patreon, thank you. Just know you're making a difference in the lives of these women. If you like this video and you want to see me do more stuff like this, one of the best ways you can indicate that is actually by subscribing if you're not. We're so close to hitting our goal of 100,000 subscribers, and I rarely ask for subscriptions because I think that's just a bad look, but we're like 7,000 subs away. So if you're watching this video and you're not subscribed and you're here at the end, in the deep end, just go a little bit deeper and hit that subscription button. It'll mean the world to me. Sort of. More so my ego, but whatever. Thanks.